Ms. Taylor. Good question. Y'all ready? I'd like to welcome everyone to our Monday, March 9th, 2020, 6 p.m. County Council meeting. Do we have the approval of the agenda? Any discussion? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The agenda is approved. Now down to invocation, Vice Chair Goins. Not sure.
Let us pray. Lord God, we just honor you, we bless you, we praise you, and we thank you for how great you are. We thank you for how you've kept us up into this appointed time from all hurt, harm, and danger. Thank you for allowing us to come together again. Father, we ask that you give us a willing, working spirit to come together for the good of others in Fairfield County. We place all this in your hands. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Vice Chair Goins. Next, we have the approval of February 24th, 2020 meetings. Do I have a motion? So moved. It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? If no discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. There are no public presentations. Now down to our first public comment session. Ms. Davis, anyone signed to speak?
We have 3 speakers tonight. First, Ms. Jackie Wortman speaking on the farmers market.
Good evening, Chairman Robertson and other council members.
Good evening.
Jackie Workman, District 4. At the last council meeting, February 10th, Elliott Davis submitted an audit report sustaining the facts that I and Mr. Armstrong, wait, I got the wrong one. Sorry. On February the 10th, Elliott Davis firm substantiated many facts that had been brought to council attention that was overlooked, ignored, missed, passed, and slighted by you as our governing body. There were no actions taken on the parties involved. Now you are asking for $100,000 or more for the farmers market after spending $200,000 unauthorized that was in the audit findings with the same man overseeing the project. Where will the $100,000 come from? It is my understanding that Mr. Trapp, a member of the county council government, asked for $100,000 for 2 projects in his district for children, seniors.
Ms. Workman, if we could just keep it to,
That's part of my.
could just keep it to the farmers market, please.
Well, that's going to be related to the farmers market. But let me finish. Don't interrupt me. His
Let's
projects
keep it
are
on
just
track, please.
as important. That's 3 minutes or whatever extra I got. Are just as important representing the rural areas. Mr. Bell, a council member, also asked for $84,000 for the library in Ridgeway, and you voted no.
Ms. Workman, could we please keep it to
I am Mr.
farmers market,
Robinson. I'm getting into that if you let me finish. I don't ever see you interrupt anybody else that be up here talking. And that is so rude, and you don't even like for the council members to interrupt you. That's rude for county government to interrupt a citizen for the library in Ridgeway and voted no against children, middle age, and seniors of Ridgeway. Aren't the citizens of those districts just as important? I know some of you think, no, that the farmers market is more important than anything. I have heard so many times that you represent, I just heard it in the prayer, that you represent all of Fairfield. Stand up then. Vote yes for our projects in rural areas. Thank you, Mr. Robinson, for letting me finish.
Next, Mr. Jeff Schaefer speaking on PIC.
What is PIC?
politically incorrect. You want to keep it to the subject you have on here? Well, that's good luck on that. Okay, the ordinances. The 1% sales tax apparently might require construction contracts so that we can provide administration expense reimbursements. That's what you're going to get if you have a contract. What I think is that our legal counsel is paid regardless of what new ordinances and tax restraints he brings to the council and to the citizens. I would hope that he's a citizen of Fairfield County as well, because I'm tired of being taxed. I want to pay my fair share like everybody else, but I've been doing that for 50 years, and I don't think it's fair anymore. I think we're just targeting people to pay taxes, and what are we getting for the taxes? So enough of my ordinance thing, which I think you should stop the ordinances. I want to say this, that last meeting, we didn't have any ordinances. Not one, not two, nothing. Took a vacation from ordinances. That was great. I felt happy. I'm sure you guys did too. Secondly, and obviously, most important, is the second public comment. Time to speak is off the agenda. The fact that 900 people, the Saving Fairfield, worked very hard.
Mr. Schaefer,
I'll have Mrs. Workman tell you
could
that
we
you shouldn't interrupt.
stick to things
But I'll
that's on
stay
the
with it.
agenda.
Yeah,
please.
but I'll stay with it. Don't worry. Let me get over it. Just take a minute. Thank you. Freedom of speech is not going to go away. You may not like what you hear, and sometimes we don't either. But we're entitled to our Constitution, and it states and prohibits any law limiting freedom with respect to religion, expressions, peaceful assembly, or the right of citizens to petition the government. Let me briefly explain the chain of command to all of you. The administrator serves at the pleasure of the council, and the council serves at the pleasure of the people.
Is that on the 1 cent sales tax?
That's a fact.
I mean, isn't that what you're supposed to be talking about?
Yes, one thing.
Commission on the 1 cent sales tax?
Right, politically incorrect is what I came up here to tell you.
You own another entirely different subject.
No, I'm on the same subject.
Mr. Douglas, Mr. Douglas. Mr.
Yeah,
Douglas.
I'll be glad to tell you.
I got it.
Because what I want to do is I want to ask you all if the second speaking time is going to be admonished and it was done by a vote, I'd like to
Might
see
not
by
have
a
anything
hand.
to do with the
Put
Put your
resolution.
hand up.
Douglas, it's okay.
Just put your hand up and tell me you voted against it, that you don't want the people to
Mr.
speak on
Schaefer,
the second comment.
you have anything else pertaining to you?
Well, I'd like
What's
that
on the
answer.
agenda, please, sir?
That's what I'd like. Can we answer that question?
We can answer it after the meeting. Yes, sir.
Publicly. Can we answer that
If
publicly?
the individual council members wants to answer the question, they are able to.
Yeah, I'd like that. I'll stick around. I don't need that paper up there. It's just me and you, baby.
Next, Mr. Randy Bright speaking on the farmer's market.
Randy Bright, District 1, Fairfield. The farmer's market, I'm for the general concept, the general principle in the farmer's market, but I have two key suggestions, requests. Number one, with this project, we can't go, in my opinion, we can't go forward with this project or any project until we have the procurement manual right. There's still obviously confusion over the procurement manual. Unless something's happened in the meantime I'm unaware of, we still have vagueness. We still have two key areas in there. One concerning who's really in charge of purchasing. One is how much we can spend. Is it a single project? Is it a single expenditure? What is it? And it's not fair to the people that are trying to execute the project. It's not fair to the citizens if we don't have parameters and boundaries for any project, and if we can't assign accountability. Yes, the auditors may have found some things wrong, but they found nothing legally wrong. They found nothing legally wrong. So that being said, that tells you that the boundaries are not properly set. The consequences are not spelled out. That's probably a 15-minute right to do. So please do not go forward with this project or any other capital project without doing something about the very vague and inconsequential procurement manual. I would also add, what's our goal with the farmer's market? Has anyone set any goals? Do we do we set a goal of how many visitors we're supposed to, we're shooting to get with our investment? How many people we're supposed to take care of? How many boxes of the SNAP reduced vegetables are we going to sell? Do we have any goals? Do we have anything to motivate people to really make this the best thing for Fairfield County? Or are we just there and let's have a nice farmer's market, but we really don't know where we want to take it? I haven't heard any single goal about how many visitors we want, how many visitors from the outside we want, how many people we can take care of with reduced prices from the voucher programs. I haven't seen any goals whatsoever. I have seen a lot of money spent, and it's really nice, and it could turn out very well for us. Without goals and without a path, we're not going to get maximum benefit from our dollars and our effort. And that's true, again, with any project. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes segment 1.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. There are no public hearings. Now down to item 8, ordinances, resolutions, and orders. We have one item A, resolution number 2020-03, a resolution providing for 1, the creation of a commission pursuant to the Capital Project Sales Tax Act, Title 4, Chapter 10, Article 3 of the Code of Laws of South Carolina, 1976, as amended. 2, the appointment, composition, duties, and responsibilities of such commission. And 3, other related matters related thereto. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved and properly second. As far as discussion, could I get either you, Ms. Taylor, or Mr. Rose?
Yes, I'll
come
start
up
off and I'll turn it over to CD if that'd be okay. This resolution is to create a capital sales tax commission for the purpose of moving forward as a referendum vote by the public as to whether they would support a penny sales tax for, and we anticipate this for the construction of a wastewater treatment facility and infrastructure to support future growth here in Fairfield County. CD?
Sure, I think that's a good place to start. As you well know, the tools that are at a county's disposal to fund capital needs are really limited. You've got your debt limit, or you have your general obligation bonds. That's subject, obviously, to your debt limit. Many counties across the state have found the penny sales tax that's authorized under the Capital Project Sales Tax Act to be really the only way to fund large capital improvements, whether it be administration buildings, courthouses, and in this case, I think what we're talking about here is a wastewater treatment plant. The numbers for these projects are exceptionally large. They far exceed the debt limits of nearly every county in the state. And so when you start looking at your options, a capital project sales tax is generally going to be the only viable option at your disposal. So what we're talking about here is a 1% sales and use tax that goes on essentially all sales in the county except unprepared foods. Let me talk a little bit about the process.
A question.
Sure.
Since he mentioned that, so are you telling us that the groceries will not be a part of the sales tax?
That's right. So unprepared foods are not
Okay,
subject to it.
what about medicine?
I'm not sure. I'll have to double check that. I believe that is subject to the tax, but I'm not 100% sure about that.
But the reason I asked that question is because this is a regressive tax, okay? And a lot of people have made the this a sales tax free of groceries, medicine, pharmaceuticals, and sometimes housing.
So the structure of the tax itself is unfortunately outside of our control. The Department of Revenue and state statute dictates what the tax is imposed upon, and it's up to us to decide whether or not it's as a tool beneficial for its intended purpose.
Okay, the next question is, are you telling me that we cannot dictate whether we charge the tax on medicine and pharmaceuticals?
So you're obligated to allow the Department of Revenue to impose the tax on all of the items that it would normally be imposed upon under or by statute. So you can't dictate that it should be imposed upon one type of product and not on another. That is all set forth by state statute. It's not something that's within your purview.
Any further, Mr. Bell?
Yeah, no more questions. But again, one of the things they say, especially Brookings Institute, it talks about this being a regressive tax, and it says that it unduly harms the poor, the low income, and those persons without insurance. The IRS, they even have a model, okay, on their web page that talks about how you can go in there and see how it relates to people with low income versus versus people that are wealthy, and you can see the impact. The IRS have that model on their website. It's my thinking was that you can do it for groceries, medicine, and pharmaceutical and housing.
So,
Chair, I asked that you let him finish first, and then let's ask the question.
Okay.
After
We can
he
do that.
finishes.
That's fine, Ms. Bell.
so I can certainly provide you with and I can't do it at this meeting, unfortunately, but I can provide you with a comprehensive list of the items that would be taxed.
But we
I can
have
tell
no
you that
control over it.
That's exactly right. You can't change that list. That's set by statute, and it's not something that you can adjust. So I'm happy to follow up after this meeting with a list so you understand exactly what it's going to be imposed on. But I can tell you definitively that you can't adjust what that list is going to ultimately look like. Okay.
You finished? Or?
Sure. Well, let me
Okay.
talk a little bit about the process. I think the process is important, and I think it'll inform your decision to move forward tonight. So, what you're doing tonight is you are creating the Capital Project Sales Tax Commission. This is a commission of 6 citizens from within the community who are charged with determining the capital projects that this tax is actually going to ultimately pay for. So the way this commission is going to be formed, that's also set by statute. There are 6 members of it. The breakdown of its composition is a little bit complicated, and I'm not going to get too deep into it unless you'd like for me to. But for this particular commission, you will appoint 3 commissioners, and I believe you have 3 names that are under consideration tonight. There is also a process to make sure that there's representation from within the municipalities in the county. And it's based on their relative population to each other. So under the formula that's set forth by statute, Winsboro will also appoint 2 members of the commission. And this is where it gets a little bit odd, but it's all statutory. The 2 members that are appointed by Winsboro will choose 1 additional member to round out the 6, who has to be from one of the other municipalities from within the county. So that gives us 6 in total. Those 6 commissioners will come up with a list of the capital projects that are going to be funded through this tax. I think the list that we are considering right now, or that we are hoping that they will settle upon, is funding a portion of the cost of the wastewater treatment plant that's being considered for the southern part of the county. And you always want to have a second project on there to kind of round out the use of the funds in case the amount of the funds that come in exceed what you expect. And so I think what we're considering there are sewer lines throughout the county to connect industries and commercial establishments and other needs in that portion of the county.
Is any of the council members going to be
Oh,
on?
Miss Douglas, you asked him to finish, so let's let him finish.
I'm happy to entertain questions when I'm done.
I'll see you after.
So the next step in the process, and this is the critical point. So up until the commission has come up with their list and they come back to you, all of this is effectively a planning exercise. When they come back to you with their list, and they'll also actually formulate the question that's going to go on the ballot, they adopt a resolution, they adopt all of that, they bring it back to you, and at that point in time, you get to make the decision by ordinance whether you want to move forward. Now, it's important for you to know that your power at that point, when you adopt that ordinance, is to either accept the list of projects that they have presented in total, or to reject it in total. You don't have a line item veto, in other words. You can't just strike 2 or 3 projects and leave the rest of it intact. You have to take the form of the ballot they present and the list of projects they've determined, and you have to either adopt them or reject them in total. If you adopt them at that point in time, it goes forward to a referendum, and the voters vote and decide whether or not they want to impose that 1 penny sales tax on themselves in order to fund those specific projects. The only change that you can make to that ballot is you can make the determination to include a bonding authorization in the referendum. So you can decide to add to that ballot the authorization to issue bonds to use those proceeds to finance the projects that are actually listed. Those are technically general obligation bonds of the county, but they are sized to be paid back from the revenue of that 1% sales tax. And because they're referendum approved, they also don't count against your debt limit. So that in general is the process. As far as the timeline is concerned, I've spoken with the folks at the town of Winsboro. They are preparing to make their appointments at their upcoming council meeting. I imagine that commission could probably move pretty quickly and have something back to you by probably late spring. Our drop dead date to have you give third reading of the ordinance that approves all of this is August the 15th. That's the date where we have to provide a form of the ballot to the election commission for them to put it on the ballot at the November 2020 general election. So with that kind of summary of the process and what we're doing here, I'm happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Mr. Bill, I was just letting you know, go on the Department of Revenue website, Chapter 9 gives a list of all exemptions, and medications are on there.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's my question, because if we're voting on what the commission brings up, you can't have a council member on the commission.
That's correct. So that's a really good point. A commissioner on the Capital Project Sales Tax Commission is an officer under state law and is subject to the constitutional prohibition against dual office holding. So just like you can't serve on county council and you can't also be the treasurer, the folks who are serving in these roles can't serve in any other position of an officer. They can't serve on a technical college board, a public hospital board, anything that would be appointed or elected effectively. That's right.
Mr. Bill.
Okay, did I hear you correctly? And you saying that those commissioners would decide what's on the list for projects?
That is correct.
And they had to we had to either accept it all or reject it all.
That's correct.
Okay, now for that list, we have Rick Gibson, Randy Bright, and Harriet Brown. That's what's on the list that was given to us.
That's right.
Okay, and also, do they get paid?
They do not.
Okay.
Any further, Mr. Bill? Council have any further questions?
I guess I don't have a question. So, I guess we selected, those persons to go ahead and look at that. And do the council, who provide guidance to that group? So when they go out there to select the projects, if we either have to accept or reject, what happens if they come back and says, I want to build a complex, okay, right there in the town of Winsboro?
So I think that there are lots of different ways of going about this process of deciding the list of projects that you're going to consider. In some cases, you do kind of a cattle call, for lack of a better phrase, and you put it out to all of the different groups within the community, and you say, submit projects to us, and we'll decide which ones are worthy and which ones aren't. And we'll come up with, in some cases, if you look at some of these ballots, they're 150 projects long. There is certainly some merit to that. and I'm sure there are groups out there that are getting projects funded that would be difficult to fund otherwise. I do think when you go that route, I think the criticism to going that route is that the tax is not as impactful. All of those are likely projects that could possibly be funded through some other means. What we're talking about here is funding a significant portion of the cost of the wastewater treatment plant, a project that can't be funded through any other means. This is, in many respects, your only option of coming up with, and we don't have the exact numbers yet, but $10, $11, $12 million to devote towards the cost of this project. So of course, the commission undertakes its exercise with the knowledge that ultimately you get to make the decision whether or not this is going to move forward. I think it does certainly conveying clear information from council that you have an expectation that this tax is going to ultimately fund the wastewater treatment plant is an important step in the process to make sure that they know what their limitations are.
Okay, I guess the good part about it is that it do you have groceries and medication, but the serious problem is that they just come up with the list.
We have no control over that.
Yeah, but I mean,
so it is intended to have there's intended to be kind of a grassroots process to decide the capital projects in the county that are most important, and to make sure that they benefit the county at large, which is why there is a requirement that you have significant representation on the commission from within the municipalities. Half of the representation on the commission is from within municipalities in the county. But ultimately, they do have to take some direction from you as to the scope of the projects that you're willing to consider.
Thank you. Vice Chair Goins.
I'd like to say these appointees, I would think, since they are part of Fairfield County, they know what our needs are specifically. They've been hearing them for a long time. They know what it is for economic development, what the needs are. So I would just presume that these people are like-minded enough to move forward with the needs of the county first rather than doing other things. So in that realm, there just have to be people that we can just put a confidence or trust in to do what is best and needful for the county.
Well, so certainly, absolutely, I agree with you 100%. I think there's also something to be said for receiving some formal direction from the county. And so whether that takes the form of a letter from the county administrator, I think that's perfectly acceptable. That is an acceptable part of the process to give them some direction as to what county council is willing to consider. And if they decide to go outside of that, there's nothing we can do to stop them. That's just the process that the statute has created, but ultimately you get to make the final decision as to whether or not to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes.
You're welcome.
Council, have any further discussion before we entertain a vote? All right. All those in favor of resolution number 2020-3 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All that oppose?
Nay.
How many is that, nay? 2? Is that 5-2? Now down to board and commission minutes. Each council member should have received just this information from Airport Commission, Disabilities and Special Needs. Now down to board and commission appointments. We have several. First, we have the appointment of Mr. Carl Kennedy to the Zoning Board of Appeals, District 7. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, could we make the motion to approve all one time?
If so deemed necessary, I'm fine with that if council. All right. We have, okay, it's been moved and seconded for Mr. Carl Kennedy, James L. Greene, Ms. Ruchelle Heath to the Zoning Board. The reappointment of Mr. Randy Sisk, Aeronautics Commission. Reappointment of Mr. Daniel Heath, to Aeronautics Commission. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed?
Nay.
Which one you opposed to? You opposed to all?
Yeah.
Okay. 6-1. There is no new business. Now down to our county administrator's report. Mr. Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First up tonight, we have Mr. Joseph Bernard, who is our representative with Providence Hospital, here to give us an update on our facility here. And I think it's a particularly good time to get an update because, again, as many of you may have read in the news, Prisma has a bid in currently, I think, or is looking to possibly purchase Providence. And we would like to know if we would have any changes there.
All right, thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the invitation. Both Mr. Taylor and Mr. Gilbert have spoken to me in the past. I was here in June or July of last year. We had been open about 6+ months at the freestanding ER, and we had agreed that I was going to try and come back 6+ months after that and kind of give a 1-year plus State of the Union of the freestanding emergency room here in Fairfield County. So I will do that. Then, if it's all right, I was going to talk a little bit about what Providence Health is doing to prepare for the COVID-19 virus, and thirdly, to talk about Mr. Taylor's point about the Prisma Health acquisition of Providence Health. So briefly, with respect to Fairfield, I'm speaking about calendar year 2019. For those 12 months, we saw just under 9,700 emergency department specific patients. We had budgeted for 7,500 in 2019, and that was based on historical trends that the emergency room in Fairfield Memorial Hospital had been seeing for the previous 2 to 3 trailing years. So that said, we eclipsed our budget, if you will, by 2,700 patients. To us, that's great as far as keeping healthcare somewhat local in Winsboro and in Fairfield County. That was the whole intention of Providence Health partnering with Fairfield County, the state of South Carolina, to have a healthcare footprint to remain in the county. Along with the 9,700 emergency medicine patients, we saw just under 5,700 outpatients, and those would be described as either seeking lab services, some kind of a blood draw and lab test to be accomplished, as well as imaging services or radiology, so CT, X-ray, ultrasound. Again, that was 5,700 patients in 2019. With respect to leadership, I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of this. We kind of look at it as a dyad model, both a physician and a nursing leader, now representing on-site leadership at the freestanding emergency room here in this community. Dr. Duncan Holliday is the physician. He's been in his position at this location since June or so of 2019. We're really pleased. Duncan Holliday doing a great job as the physician leader, and he is now partnering with a nurse at the facility, Arlene Vance. You may recall that we had a woman when we first opened, and really through the first year, Ruchelle Clark, and she left Providence Health to seek a position elsewhere. And so Arlene was a working nurse in the freestanding ER and has essentially stepped up to a leadership position. Just for awareness, we have a Joint Commission survey coming specific to the lab, and that will include the freestanding ER as well as our 2 labs in our 2 facilities, both at Northeast and downtown. This is an every 2-year Joint Commission survey. Joint Commission is essentially the national gold standard of accrediting hospitals and healthcare agencies. And the way it works is they do a lab survey separate and solely covering lab services. Then they do a survey that covers everything outside a lab. We had that everything outside a lab survey completed on November 27th of 2019, and that will happen every 3 years. So again, we're in the 90-day window of a lab survey happening here in Fairfield County's freestanding ER. That window opened on February 4th, I believe, and so it's going to close around Cinco de Mayo. Or that's what we're expecting. The last 2 things I just wanted to make you aware of specific to this county. Providence Health, myself, we remain engaged with Fairfield Forward, the healthcare focused collaborative in the county, as well as the Upper Midlands Rural Health Network, which is a 3-county collaborative effort between Lancaster County, Chester, and Fairfield. And lastly, before I touch on the Prisma Health matter briefly, is the coronavirus. What we are doing is we get a lot of insight from our parent company, LifePoint Health, and to be quite candid, we're really leaning heavily on what the Centers for Disease Control puts out as far as information and seeking insight and advice, coupled with the state of South Carolina, DHEC, and the South Carolina Hospital Association. So many of the precautions that we would put in place for any kind of virus or viral matter, whether it be the flu or something of that nature, that's what we have in place today. It sounds somewhat basic, but hand washing and doing that properly is extremely appropriate, as well as isolating patients that may come in to, in our case, the ER or a hospital setting that needs to be isolated in an appropriate isolation room with protective gear used for the people treating that patient until a test is run. What we're seeing right now is if a patient comes in and there's a suspicion, if you will, of the coronavirus, that patient is placed in all those isolation and precautionary measures I was speaking about. The test is run and it's sent out to be tested by either DHEC or the CDC, and we're told it's taking about a 24 to 48 hour turnaround for those test results to come back either positive or negative. Okay, so if I could, the last point is on last Thursday, March 5th at 11 a.m., the public press release was made about Prisma Health moving forward to purchase Providence Health from LifePoint Health, our parent company. So LifePoint Health purchased what was then called Providence Hospitals back in early February of 2016. And so right now, we're in the very early stages, obviously, of finalizing the Prisma purchase of Providence. There are a number of, well, there's a lot of work that's gone in to get us to this point, but there are a number of regulatory matters and legal points to be finalized and completely addressed, if you will, before the deal were to become final. I have no indication or idea what that timeline looks like because we don't control the regulatory and the legal work and matters that still have to be addressed. So that was one of the questions that we're getting an awful lot from our own folks as well as outside of Providence. But the candid response is that is to be determined. And we are working with our company, LifePoint Health and Prisma, to bring the deal to closure as soon as possible, but in a reasonable time frame. And we're very confident that this is an enhancement for the community health care. Us being able to be a part of the Prisma network. They have today 4 hospitals in the Midlands, and the proposed and to be acted upon deal would add the 2 Providence hospitals, our freestanding emergency room, and Kershaw Health in the city of Camden. So with that, I'm open to trying to address any questions you may have.
Council have any questions? Thank you for the update, Mr. Bernard.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we have a request of action coming from our Community Development Director, and we will have Mr. Chris Clausen, and we'll have also Mr. Russell Price come up. We have a request of action that's been before the Finance Committee. It has gotten recommendation for approval to full council. The request is to pull $130,000 from our $500,000 capital building projects budget, with $30,000 going to upfitting the Drawdy Park building and $100,000 going to adding a kitchen and a sprinkler system to the farmer's market.
Before we begin, do I have a motion? Because this is an action item. It's been moved and properly second. Now, discussion.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council, and Mr. Taylor. If you don't mind hitting the lights, sir, and actually it's got to go a little bit darker, I think. I apologize. Yeah. So I am Chris Clausen. I'm the Community Development Director, but I also serve on the Fairfield Forward Board. I'm the board chair, as was mentioned by Mr. Bernard, who I thought was still, he's in the back. So that is a local nonprofit that does focus on healthcare in the past, but we're trying to expand more and just look at how we can bring community stakeholders together to bring about change in the community. One funding option that we have right now is a certain grant, and they look at these things called evidence-based interventions. And so that coalition, Fairfield Forward, came together, looked at all the statistics that we have, and in particular, DHEC has done some health studies, and they found a number of different things. So we have, at this point, about 10 initiatives we're trying to go after. And Fairfield County happens to have 2 of the initiatives that we're wanting to pursue. One is going to be the fitness area. So that was highlighted by DHEC that there was a lack of access in particular. For some reason they look at with females. So females said that they had a lack of access to physical fitness. So we were looking, this is already a building that we, the county, had slated for rehab, and there was a great opportunity to partner with this organization to expand that offering and bring fitness there, as well as the farmers market. This request, we weren't able to do anything. Fairfield Forward wasn't able to do much with the farmers market because there is no kitchen there. So this request tonight is really to get the $100,000 to finish up what would be required to get that kitchen operational, and that involves multiple things. So I'll talk about that shortly. But next. So the fitness area, we had already received the $60,000 from PARD. That was originally just intended to be a roof and window replacement, and the focus was more on storage and some athletics use as well. But now with Fairfield Forward desiring to again address that, that was highlighted, we're looking at adding an additional fitness area, restrooms, locker rooms, office space, and the athletics area as well. So it's just parceling up the building, and I'll show that on the next slide. So the request is for an additional $30,000 for a new HVAC unit. The other one could handle the building in and of itself. However, now with that additional fitness area, that it's going to use more. So we would need a second HVAC unit in the building, and then also just other costs involved. Obviously, as you can see, going from just storage to those others is going to be a little more costly. Okay, so this is a rendering, conceptual rendering of the building. It's right out. Don't go out the door, but if you were to go out the door and look past the parking lot, you'd see the old Averett School cafeteria building, I believe is what it originally was. It then was most recently the building maintenance shop about 8 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. So this was even looked at in the past as a full fitness area, I think back in 2012. So it wasn't entirely out of the blue, but this is again a rendering. And I'll show the schematics next. This is going to be a little bit, difficult to see, but you'll see the building is kind of set up in thirds. I had highlighted the area that will be the fitness area, and I'll show you in particular what's going to come there. But that middle area is where you're going to have the office space, the restrooms, and locker rooms. And then the one to the far right, that third there, is going to be storage, athletics, training room, and athletics department focus. They'll have people can come in as well and sign up. Now this is just the fitness area drawn out. This is the latest quote we have from a vendor to upfit the bottom portion with the fitness equipment. The top portion will be the dance and Zumba cardio area, and so that's what is being funded by the Fairfield Forward, and then the remainder of the building is which is what we're going to do with the existing funding, and then that additional 30. So the farmers market breakdown of that additional request for $100,000. The sprinkler system is going to be about $30,000. We've gotten some quotes, but they're all in that same range. The water line, so in order to bring that service, the sprinkler system online, we need at least a 6-inch water line. There isn't one right there on Washington Street, so we have to go over to Liberty. So that's going to be at least $10,000 to run that. It'll go behind the buildings there off of Congress. The restroom addition, with changing the building right now is farmer's market, so it's a mercantile. So you have people coming in, they'll purchase things, and then they'll leave. If you want to have for events or a kitchen to be brought online and people to be served there, you would need an assembly occupancy, and that means you're going to have some more restrooms. So we would have to build some restrooms off the back as the ideal location. So we're budgeting $20,000 for that. And then the basic kitchen equipment is, the biggest one is like $25,000 for a range, or rather, I'm sorry, a fire suppression hood system. So that'll be at least $20,000 to $25,000 for that. And then we're looking at just the basics for the kitchen to be operational, essentially a warming kitchen at that point. This is the layout of just the kitchen area in the back. So really this is what the request boils down to. In order to bring that kitchen online, we have to run the sprinklers there to that building, and we have to upfit that with the basic $45,000 worth of, $40,000 worth of kitchen equipment. So those are the existing restrooms as well. So you can see we only have 2 facilities right now. We need an additional, I had the building official do it up, but I believe 2 per. So 2 female and 2 male additional ones. So are there any questions?
I understand that both. Could you give me an explanation? You may have some council members that favor one project over the other. Could you explain why we voting on one?
Oh, I'm sorry, because this was related to that grant. I apologize.
Thank you.
So this as well, the Fairfield Forward Board did vote, though, to support the clerks to the farmers market. So we are looking at bringing it, or they are going to be able to fund a clerk or 2 position to be there at the market to accept SNAP. However, they wanted to pursue other evidence-based interventions that would deal with the kitchen. And so actually preparing foods, teaching families how to prepare foods adequately, and such, that would be the focus of it. So in order to pursue that, the kitchen would have to be done. So that's why they were lumped together.
Now, I understand $100,000 for the farmer's market. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What was the total price for the recreation?
The recreation, if that was only 30, I was asking to be moved in there. There's 75 from the grant that we're going to purchase the equipment and flooring for the fitness. But that focus of that funding is on the fitness center itself. So that third of the building, not the remaining 2/3.
Okay. Is the parking lot paved up there yet?
The parking lot project is still underway, but it's not paved. No, not yet.
But is underway?
It is underway. Yes, sir.
Mr. Bell.
Go back to the part where you had you saw the building itself. That's a really nice building.
That's a nice rendering. Yes, sir.
It is. As you know, I really had some concerns early on, and I think I mentioned that in the Administration Finance Committee about you being the chairman of that committee. Okay, but you're a county employee, but you are. And but one of the things I did is I came to the Fairfield Forward meeting to make sure I understand what was all involved and why we were doing this and that kind of stuff. And yes, and to one of the things I found out was there's a lot of work going on, and there was a lot of people there with a lot of expertise. And as you know, I said that in the meeting, but also said in the meeting that that I couldn't understand why all the focus was in this area and none in the other areas. Okay, and I voiced that concern at the meeting, although I wasn't there but one time. And if you look at the work that the committee is doing, okay, and you see the energy level, you know, it's some good work to be done. Okay, and again, I believe you've done a good job in trying to lead that. But again, how you get there is the other question, right? So, I really have a problem is that we can always find money for items and things and stuff that's in other areas, but when it comes to the outlying communities, we never can find the money. I never can find the will to do it. And that's what's so disappointing to me. And I just believe the citizens themselves need to be outraged, because why is the money always being spent in particular places? The citizens themselves should not allow this to happen continuously. Okay? And with that, I want to move to amend the motion. I move that we amend the motion to put $100,000 and to keep the $130,000 as is, but I move that we spend $100,000 in the Ridgeway area to get some things for recreation. We can start with a mini park, like a certified volleyball court, some a solar lit nature trail, and a walking path. If I can get a second.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Motion's been made to allocate $100,000 to the Ridgeway area. Any discussion in reference to this? We can discuss it, but we can't vote on it. It has to go on the next agenda.
Okay, now I'm adding that to that.
To
the other motion. This is an amendment to do it all one time because it's coming out of the same pot of money.
If I'm not mistaken, according to the bylaws, we have to put it on the next agenda. Am I correct, Mr. Morgan?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, members of council, we have a request for action, and it's a specific item as it relates to obtaining, I'm reading it from the agenda itself, you'll have to forgive me. Got to put my readers on. To obtain approval for the county to support the Healthy People's Healthy Carolinas evidence-based initiatives and allocate matching funds to complete the kitchen and the farmers market and a fitness room in the Drawdy Parks and Recreation Building. Inasmuch as that was a specific request, an action item that was brought forward, it would require that if there's going to be an amendment to be made, that it would be made at the discussion for that would have to take place and a vote to change that request for action at the next meeting.
Correct.
Well, I make a motion, amendment to his, I'd like $100,000 put down in town Winsboro. That should be added to it too.
Mr. Douglas, let's deal with this amendment first. Any further discussion?
I guess one of the things, when you say we can't vote on it, so you have to withdraw the amendment.
You withdrawing your amendment?
I mean, if you're saying it is illegal to vote, that's what you're saying.
I'm not saying it's illegal to vote. What I'm saying is the request for action was specific as to its terms, and if you would like to make a change to that, then that would have to come forward in a new request for action at a later meeting and point in time. So the vote can go forward as it relates to this request for action. If you want to amend it to include that, then it would have to come up before at a later date and time.
For another meeting.
Okay.
Are you withdrawing your motion?
I mean, if you cannot take action on it, there's no need to do anything.
Are you withdrawing your?
Yeah, I can withdraw.
All right. Mr. Douglas, are you withdrawing your motion as well?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Claus, you finished?
If there's any other questions.
Any further discussion from council?
Yes, it is. It is more discussion. Again, one of the things I guess I want for this county is
Mr. Bell, not to, but do you have any further discussion related to this action?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, one of the things I want for this county is that we make sure that our resources are spent in trying to make sure the entire county is treated fairly. Okay? Because we don't want to hinder good work. Okay? We don't want to hinder people being able to go to the farmer's market and buy stuff. Okay? We don't want to stop stuff. But at the same time, it is not fair that when it comes to Mr. Trapp district and my district, we can't get anything. It's not fair.
Thank you, Mr. Bell.
And it is not fair that that's the only thing coming before us to vote on.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. No further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Mr. Bell? You in favor? That's 6-1 in favor. Thank you. There is no clerk to council's report. Now down to our county council time. You want to hit the lights for us, please?
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Any council member like to be recognized? Mr. Douglas.
You know, we have a couple of council members that, no matter how good a situation is or what we need, they're going to vote nay. That makes me want to, anytime they bring anything up, I'm going to vote nay. Anything they have. If they bring it up and second it, I'm going to vote nay. Just because they vote nay on so many good things that we're trying to do.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas.
So, Mr. Douglas, are you saying whether it's good or bad,
No.
you're going to vote nay?
Anything you bring up, I'm going to vote nay, just like you vote nay on everything else.
All right, let's get some order in there now. Mr. Pauly. You're not ready.
I make a motion that we enter into executive session to receive legal advice.
I'm sorry. I think Ms. Goins, before you.
Excuse me. Thank you. Thank you so much. Just have an article I would like to share. And it also, as we were talking about development and doing different projects and everything, this is something that did some research and, well, it was given to me. This is dated Wednesday, January 14th, 1976, and this is just some information I want to read. 20,000 grant given to Jenkinsville Water Company will expand. Determination and a lot of hard work has paid off for members of the Jenkinsville Water Company, which saw some dark days during the summer of 1974. The Rural Water Company in western Fairfield County is presently serving over 150 families and claims 210 members. And if that isn't impressive enough for an area which a few short years ago was getting most of its water from private wells or any other source available. The water lines are now ready to be laid in the Monticello community. On Friday of last week, a cheerful group gathered at Whitehall Church in Jenkinsville for the presentation of a check in the amount of $20,000, a grant from the state to the water company. J.O. Wendell Martin, chairman of the company, introduced special guests, including Senator Isidore Lurie, Representative Ben Hornsby, J.C. Fant, chairman of the county council, Council W.J. Heath. Mr. Martin is also a member of the council. Kelly Smith, director, as brief as possible. The document is kind of aged. Kelly, let me back up a little bit. Heath. Kelly Smith, Director, Industrial and Community Development, South Carolina Electric Cooperative Association. Mrs. Hattie Rickett, Chairman of the South Carolina Rural Water and Sewer Grants Advisory Committee. And Norwood Obear, Attorney for the Water Company, and members of the board. The Jenkinsville Water Company obtained a loan of $130,000 from the Farmers Homeless Administration in the spring of 1973. The water system was put into operation in May of 1974. 2 short months later, the deep wells sunk to provide water were capped by the State Board of Health, which had discovered radium gases in them. This development threw us into a state of shock, Martin remembered Friday. The initial loan had been used to sink the wells and lay water lines. Now the water company had the loan to repay and no water. The immediate problem of supply was solved temporarily by South Carolina Electric and Gas Company, which began pumping water from the nuclear plant site nearby, while a permanent solution was being sought. A grant of $56,500 from the FHA bailed the company out of its dilemma. Another well was sunk, giving the company 2 active wells and adequate supply of water. Phase 1 had been completed, but the members of the Jenkinsville Water Company, apparently thriving on adversity, weren't content to let well enough alone. Neighbors in Monticello also needed a good water supply. Perhaps the system could be enlarged. The company applied for a state grant, which was presented at Friday's meeting and went back to call on the Farmers Home Administration, this time for a loan of $38,500. 48 taps in the Monticello area have already been signed for, and pipelines are being laid. 60 taps is the goal. The board calls this Phase 2. Friday meeting, Ms. Smith praised those who had provided leadership in the effort to obtain water supply, saying that without this, the goal would not have been reached. Ms. Rickett told the group of efforts in her home community in rural Kershaw County to obtain water. Property owners told that it would be impossible. Through much hard work, water was eventually pumped into 150 homes. In a few days, the water system will be serving 600 with a projected goal of 2,000 taps. Representative Hornsby commended those present for their achievement in the bringing water to the 2 new rural communities. Senator Lurie called South Carolina primary a rural state and used John F. Kennedy's famous quotation, "It is better to light one candle than curse the darkness." Lurie, who reminded those present that he might not continue to be Fairfield senator due to reappointment, pledged, nevertheless, to do all he could to help Fairfield citizens. Director of the Jenkinsville Water Company were J.O. Wendell Martin, President, Robert F. Crumlin, Vice President, Ms. Bernice B. Rabb, Secretary, Ms. Mae McMicken, Treasurer, and Ms. Serlita G. Caldwell Wright Martin, Alfred Hollis, John Huey, and Robert McMicken. Ms. Unita Pearson manages and operates the system. Engineer is Edgar C. Williams. Paul Booth is FHA County Supervisor. James Patrick is the accountant. Aubert, attorney. And contractors are Phillips Utilities Incorporated of Gaffney and Derby Richburg. And I want to also read this part. Thurman announces Fairfield in Economic Development Region. Senator Strom Thurman said today that 12 South Carolina counties which had not previously been in either of the 2 federal economic development regions extending into the state have now been included in the Coastal Plains region. Thurman said the Secretary of Commerce authorized the inclusion of the 12 additional South Carolina counties as of January 1st, bringing to 40 the number of South Carolina counties in the Coastal Plains Economic Development Region. The newly included counties are Abbeville, Chester, Edgefield, Fairfield, Greenwood, Lancaster, Lauren, McCormick, Newberry, Saluda, Union, and York. The 12 counties comprise a strip running northeast-southwest across the lower Piedmont area of the state. Was situated between the 6 counties of the Appalachian Economic Development Region. To the northwest, 21 counties of the Coastal Plains region, As a result, the 12-county strip was the only area of the state not qualified to receive certain federal funds for economic development. Their status as the only area of the state not entitled to such assistance often led their descriptions by advocates as the 12 lost counties. Local officials of the 22 county areas had long advocated inclusion of their area in their Appalachian region, or the Coastal Plains region. Thurman said, "I'm very pleased that these counties have been included in the Coastal Plains region. This will give them the same opportunities for economic assistance as other counties and establish equity among all areas of the state." The Jenkinsville Water Company is not a private company. It is not a minority company. It is a public company funded by the state, funded by the federal government and other entities for the purpose of economic development in a rural area. It is included in from the beginning. This is over 46 years ago. When I asked a while back that the county include the company into, and we keep talking about the western side include into the regional water system, there was some static. It's already included because actually the county is supported, the county has already carried that and has vested in it. The citizens have vested in it. This was started by trailblazers 46 years ago. Now I'm asking again that the citizens, the county, the town have already joined in, that we come together and we bring economic development from the western side. If we want it to be built, we want it to grow, we want it to thrive, we're gonna have to get in the game and do what we need to do. So I'm asking again that the county take the necessary action to bring it as a part of a regional water system for the well-being of Fairfield County as it was intended to be by the legislators before. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vice Chair Goins. Mr. Bell?
I guess I'm looking at Mr. Taylor. So explain Ms. Goins' request for the county, us, with the water authority.
I mean, I would take that request, again, this is the first I'm hearing of it, I would take that request as to reach out to Jenkinsville Water to ask them to be a part of the joint commission that we have put together. But we've got that as an open invitation to anyone in the county who runs a water and sewer system. If there's a way.
Mr. Taylor, I have tried also. I've tried to reach out.
Right, yes, it's an open invitation essentially to anyone in the county, whether it's the Mitford Water System or the Jenkinsville. But again, she's wanting to concentrate on, again, reaching out to them to see if there's a way they can participate.
Okay, but can you, I guess the other question, because the other week, Mr. Trabb asked that question, are we looking at take over Jenkinsville Water Company?
Again, that's one of those things. We're not forcing. Again, I said we're reaching out to anyone. If we can help them, if there's a way we can work together, that's great. But as far as us having the ability to force,
I'm just asking. I'm just asking.
This is not about a takeover. This is about economic development for the county. And it's not a choice of just a few people. Would like to have a meeting and have the public in and have, just as before, it took people in the community that cared about the community, that cared about other people more than themselves, to come together with the state and with the county. And Mr. Wendell Martin was on the council, and I guess he brought the request to the council and said, help us develop the county. So that's all that I'm saying is that the members of the community, the citizens of Fairfield County, let's work together to use the resources that we have. This is not a decision for one or two people. Everybody's responsible for doing better. Everybody's responsible for growing. We have children, we have grandchildren, we have seniors, we have people that can't speak for themselves. And it's time we move past all of this me and he and all. No matter what county it is, it took people that care to work together to build it. So that's all that I'm asking, is that we come together and we finish. Someone else started it. Somebody planted. Now let's come along and water it. so that God can bring the increase. That's all that I'm asking, and I will work with Mr. Taylor, whomever I have to. Let's call a community meeting and explain why I'm making the request and the necessity of it. We're talking about infrastructure all the time, but we're sitting on what we need to do what we need to do. Thank you.
Mr. Paul.
I make a motion that we enter into executive session to receive legal advice as to proposed contractual arrangements pertaining to two items. One, current status of agreement relating to local health care, and two, pending economic development matter, both in accordance with South Carolina Code of Law, Section 30-4-70A2.
Motion's been made to enter to executive session pertaining to those two matters. It's been seconded by Mr. Bell. All those in favor? Any opposed? We're now in executive session.